African immigrants create work opportunities for the unskilled local people and also invest in the country. Any violence against African immigrants in South Africa may well endanger the growth of the South African economy and stifle the growth of local companies in their efforts to expand into other African countries. According to the census in 2013, South Africa is also the home to nationals from 53 African countries. This also gives the country a wider range of ethnic variety than the rest of the continent. In a country with 11 official languages, tolerance and patience should come naturally. Violence in general and against immigrants not only tarnishes our reputation, but as a country, this creates division.
Now, since the year 2007, South Africans have witnessed xenophobic acts continually becoming to the forefront, more so in times of economic and financial distress on the country. Though many have tried to come up with a number of reasons to explain these terrible incidents, none of them have made any compelling sense. This morning here on Sunrise, we try to unpack the impact caused by these xenophobic attacks on South Africans in South Africa or residing, studying in other countries, and the tarnishing of the South African brand. To talk more on these issues and more, we're now joined by the Department of Home Affairs spokesperson Mayihlome Tshwete, as well as Kenneth Diole from the South African Institute of International Relations, as well as Gwen Ngwenya from the South African Institute of Race Relations. And you can be part of our conversation by giving us a call as well. And a bit later on, we'll also try to get some insights from members of the communities that have been affected recently. That number for you to call in is 011 447 1742 or 011 447 1620. We'll also be taking your comments on our Facebook as well as our Twitter pages. Good morning, gentlemen and a lady.
Good morning.
Okay. So I think what we try to do in that intro is to sort of give a context of where we find ourselves, exactly what is going on. Are these just criminal activities that the community is taking up and trying to resolve, or do we have a serious case of xenophobic attacks? Because it also seems like we're afraid to call it out that. What exactly, from the international relations point of view, is going on?
Well, I think that xenophobia, just like racism, is quite difficult to really define because it is so subjective. But I think the matter of the criminality is also something that we can't shy away from. I remember reading a Stats SA report that came out in 2014 of the 2014-2015 year, highlighting that there's been an increase in the fear of crimes in South Africa, but also a decrease in the trust in the police, and as a reason as to why people were not reporting crimes. So you have that rising gap, increasing fears related to crime, and yet a shortage or a lack of trust in terms of policing. What that does create is people taking crime-related matters into their own hands. If you have the resources and you're middle class, what that means is you'll opt to get private security, and we have seen a rise in greater private security in the country. But of course, if you don't have the resource and the funding, what do? That leads to vigilantism, which we've seen not only in, xenophobic related attacks, but even among South Africans, people taking matters in their own hands. Where there's somebody who's rumored to be a rapist or somebody who's a thief, the community tends to deal with it on their own instead of resorting to the police.
Okay, so now the big challenge, Mayihlome, is that it's squarely placed on the Home Affairs Department. There is a conversation of undocumented immigrants, and the feeling that the Department of Home Affairs somehow is saying, this is a foreign affairs conversation, we're handling it, there are some criminal elements, but it's not really xenophobic attacks.
Well, I think as Gwen is saying, and as a number of people have stated before, including the president and also the former president, His Excellency Thabo Mbeki, that this is quite a complex issue. The media seems to want to push it to a simple definition and label, but it's quite complex. The situation in communities in terms of the economic situation has a bearing on it. The policing issue, when we engage with members of community, they raised repeatedly that they are having issues with policing in their community, that they report things and nothing happens to them. And we need to understand that this complexity plays itself out in different ways, in the form of people looting and targeting certain shops, and in the form of people that may have xenophobic sentiments. What we are doing as government is to understand that it's not squarely on Home Affairs' lap. This is a shared responsibility that we all have. from the South African Police Services to Home Affairs, and also to the South African National Defence Force, which mans our border line. To the issue of undocumented migrants, I don't think some of these attacks are about that. A majority of people in the country are here with legal documents. I mean, you may have a debate whether there are too many of those documents that are flying around, but factually, most folks are here legally. And most of them are here through what we call the asylum seeker system. So if people have an issue with that, I think they should raise their concerns with government and also allow government to tell them some of the interventions that we are taking to ensure that that asylum seeker system is not abused and that we have genuine refugees that are supposed to be in the country that we are protecting.
Okay, so maybe we'll get into that a bit later on. Let's just talk about the impact of that and the perception that it creates about us as a country continentally. I mean, in Nigeria, recently they've commented saying that the AU should intervene.
Yeah. No, I think the reality is that it is hurting brand SA. It is hurting, obviously, South Africa's economic prospects. Already, if we're speaking economically, the downgrading possibility is a threat, obviously, to most investors. But obviously, with these activities happening as well, most people are now wary. The tourism industry will be largely affected by that. And I think more importantly, we have to recognize that most people are not aware of our shared histories with many of these African foreign nationals who are in South Africa. You know, I think it speaks to the fact that we are ill-informed, but also speaks to the frustration of the people on the ground that, you know, whatever message is coming across with no action, they cannot wait. They will take things into their own hands.
What are the complexities that inform that notion and that perception that people on the ground are feeling that they are unheard, hence they're taking matters into their own hands, them feeling that it's a Home Affairs problem, you know, they're allowing illegal immigrants to fill up our country?
Well, I mean, I think as we've highlighted, it's partly due to a lack of trust in policing, but I think what we haven't yet touched on is also the economic problems that underlie the social unrest. The fact that with high unemployment, what we're seeing is that these xenophobic attacks aren't really just purely, based on people's nationalities. They're actually targeting, you know, shop owners, etc., people who own businesses. So it's directly related to an economic issue. Even recently, the group in Mayihlome, I think it's the Mayihlome concerned residents who started the protest march. One of the organizers was speaking on radio the other day, and he said that what we see in South Africa is over 60% of the youth being unemployed, and yet you have all of these shop owners who don't even pay taxes to South Africa. So, I mean, in that comment, you can already see that a large part of this issue is an economic one, and I think quite rightly so has been pointed out, we can't solely look at it being a Home Affairs issue. We have to look at it as a broader economic issue about addressing unemployment. Okay, so it's not a Home Affairs issue, but it's a point of entry at Home Affairs. When, you know, it touches on economic issues, it touches on policing. So if people are coming into the country, they're starting businesses. How is Home Affairs working with other departments to make sure that there is accountability, that those people are held responsible and they are carrying themselves as responsible citizens?
Well, look, I don't want to say that, excuse me, Penny. I don't want to say that it's not a Home Affairs issue. It is. But it's shared amongst other departments too, South African Police Services, and as Gwen is pointing out, also your economic cluster. So it's quite a diverse and complex problem that is shared amongst a multitude of departments. What we are doing as the Department of Home Affairs is making sure that all movement in and out of South Africa is regular. And again, I want to caution against the exaggeration of illegal immigrants, that there is, you know, this overflow.
There's undocumented illegal immigrant.
There's undocumented migrants, but again, I emphasize, a majority of the folks that are in the country are with proper documents. And let's be clear, the people that were running around attacking shops were not checking people's documents. If it was a Somalian, if it was anybody else that owned the shop, they were attacking the shop. So it wasn't, let's not make it a clear-cut policy issue that people were checking documents. So what we are trying to do, as I've said, is make sure that the rightfully existing policies of protecting refugees will never stop as a country, because our constitution enshrines them. So we're never going to move away from taking people in who are persecuted in their own countries, whether because of their sexuality, their religion, or political views. But we must make sure that that is not used by economic migrants as the easiest way to get into the country. We must understand that we have low-skilled labor in South Africa, and a lot of the continent has the same. So as the minister has been saying, we must try not create a situation where we are substituting South African workers for foreign nationals, but rather they complement each other. And our visa regime takes that into cognizance, that we don't have all the skills. So Africa has some of the skills, we must get those skills. Africa has businesses, we must get some of those businesses to come into South Africa. South Africa will not grow purely on South African business alone, on South African skills alone, and South African labor alone. So we need to make sure that we understand that we need to be integrated into Africa, but we need to do it properly. And ourselves as the Department of Home Affairs is making sure that we improve on the management of migration. If I can just touch on another issue quickly, Pena, and I know I'm stealing some time here. I think the perception that South Africa is xenophobic must be challenged. We are amongst the most diverse countries in the world.
Yeah.
And as your promo was saying, South Africa takes in the most amount of African nationals. We are the most Afropolitan country in the world. So I think the simplistic label that South Africa is xenophobic must be rejected by most South Africans. They live as foreigners live in our communities. They work in corporate SA, and some of them even work in government. So